Hey TV fans, Bored Now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about the new Disney Plus Marvel series, episode 1 of it. It is Secret Invasion. Episode 1 is called Resurrection. Full spoilers from the start of this review as always. So this is the spin-off involving Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury character. And the first episode is set in Moscow. We find out that we see Nick Fury return to Earth after a year on another planet. He reconnects with his confidants, the Cody Smulders character, Maria Hill, and also the Ben Mendelsohn character, Agent Geller. And they get him up to speed. He is informed that there's a fringe group in Moscow who are shape-shifting and framing the Skrulls, his race, and that they're planning to set off a bomb and to like cause chaos and start a war and wipe out his race is the ultimate goal. This is set up in the opening scene of the episode where we get a brief cameo from Martin Freeman, and we think it's going to be his regular Marvel Cinematic Universe character. It actually turns out it's not. He meets with this Agent Prescott, who's a very paranoid, a very hyper character who's like coming out with all these conspiracy theories about like the Skrulls and them shape shifting, and that they're planning like big like forest style fires, kind of different like things. And it's definitely poking at like modern political themes to do with immigration or like conspiracy theories around immigration and immigrants. Different things that it's poking at in this episode, and things escalate because what we think is the Martin Freeman character, he's saying that he'll make Nick Fury aware of this and he'll get back to it. But this guy is a real conspiracy theorist where he doesn't trust Fury. He sort of thinks he might be in on it. And ultimately they get into a scuffle, and it appears as though the Freeman character kills him in self-defense, but as it turns out, when we find out later on that he's a shapeshifter, it means that he probably wiped him out intentionally, that was his plan. And so that's how they find out that he's a shapeshifter and this whole thing is going on, and they inform Fury later on when he comes down. And he obviously wants to investigate this. We also get some commentary about how, as a black person in Moscow, he seems to really stand out. There's a little bit of humour with that, which I appreciated, but it's implied that he's a bit of an outsider in this city. But you have a character played by Emilia Clarke also, who has like ties once again to the MUC or MCU, I should say, sorry. And at one point we find out that she is helping the Resistance, who are planning to set off these bombs. But it turns out, like, at first it makes it appear as though she's going to be like an outright villain. But it turns out it's a little bit more complicated than that, than she's kind of been like lured to this side of things. And she has history with like the Ben Mendelsohn character, and she learns that her mother has died in this, and we find out that she's really conflicted, but she ultimately makes a choice to help them in the episode by giving them the information of where this whole thing is going to go down. But we get this sort of subplot of like the Resistance and them taking in like, well, like the Skrulls, but like the metaphor is that they're almost like refugees. But we find out that there's something a little bit more sinister going on in this refugee camp. So that's the setup for the first episode. And I've got to say, it's a bit meh for me. It's a bit mixed, this first episode. It's not really grabbing me yet. I did find it a little bit confusing or a little bit messy and underwhelming at times. I've heard a lot of like Disney Marvel show first episodes are like that, so I'll definitely give it a chance. There are positives. There's bits that I did enjoy, so I'll sort of talk about them first. Like it's got a good cast because Olivia Colman also has a prominent scene in this episode, and there's some good humour as well. That was definitely something that stood out. I enjoyed the chemistry between like Samuel L. Jackson, Ben Mendelsohn, and the Cobie Smulders character. Like their rapport was fun to watch, and the dynamic worked pretty well for me. And some good humour. Like one scene that really was entertaining was the scene where like Sam Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn go to try and find out where this bomb is going to be set off, and they sort of rough up this one character who has like inside knowledge. But just the stuff with like them, like Sam Jackson sitting on this really valuable sort of antique chair, and he's like, it was like King Louis the 14th chair or something. It's really valuable, and you've got like Fury saying, well, everything's valuable until you set it on fire. And it's just a great like Sam Jackson moment, because in the early part of the episode he is a little bit more subdued and kind of haggard, and there's just this sense of like this character kind of regaining his like composure and sort of acclimatizing really to being back on Earth, which makes sense. But when you get those Sam Jackson moments and he really comes alive, it's great to see as always. And like no one quite does it like Sam Jackson, those sorts of moments, and that's what we see in this scene. And there's a nice bit of like back and forth and a decent little fight with the Ben Mendelsohn character as they're trying to find out where this bomb is, and ultimately they get that information from the Emilia Clarke character. So there's some decent humour at times. There's another good scene in like the bar where once again they're playing on everyone being wary of Sam Jackson's character, like how he stands out. And there's a nice little moment where he offers to buy like the whole sort of bar a drink as like a way to like get them on side. And he walks to the table and Maria's there, and she's like, so making friends again with the locals. So there's some decent moments of humour like that I did appreciate. The action is a bit hit and miss. Some of it was good. Like, as I said, that fight scene was quite good, although it did feel a little bit Bond-esque. And that's something with this first episode, is they're definitely going for, like, the spy angle and the spy feel, and almost like the James Bond style feel. And I'm not quite sure I'm digging it yet. I haven't quite got into it. Maybe it's not what I come to this sort of thing for. I know they've done it before, but yeah, I don't know. It's just not quite gelling for me at the moment. But some of the action stuff was good. Some of the action stuff not so good. There wasn't that much, but the chase sequence with the Martin Freeman character I thought was a bit too frantic and busy. So that wasn't great. The end scene actually was effective, like the tension surrounding that, and them thinking they've got hold of the people with the bombs, but it turns out they've been using decoys, so the real people with the bombs like peel away, and there's a frantic chase to get them. And the gut punch of the episode, how it ends, that moment did land quite well for me, and it's gonna be a big surprise for like long time Marvel fans, because Maria Hill, the character of her, does get killed off at the end. And it's because like when they're looking for these bombs, like Nick Fury appears in front of her, but it turns out it's not really him, it's the shapeshifter, and he's taken Nick's form and he shoots him out of nowhere. And like my mind did race to, well, okay, how big a twist is this? What exactly has happened here? But it turned out it was the shapeshifter. But yeah, that seems to be it. That's the end. Like, she's killed off. So I think they handled that really well because of the way it happened and the sort of gotcha moment. It was well done, and then they do set off the bomb, so it's obviously now setting things in motion for this to like come to a head in future episodes. So I thought it was at least a good end scene, even though I'm very mixed on the episode overall. Now, when it comes to shapeshifter stuff, I'm not quite sure how I feel about them doing this storyline, just because I've been watching quite a lot of stuff with like shapeshifters involved in recent weeks, and like the recent season of Picard used it, and I felt in that they overused it at times. Like it just became too much of a gimmick, and it definitely has its place, but also it can be overdone, and it can just be a lazy sort of device, just a cheap way to try and create surprises or tension. And I just think if it gets overdone and like you get too many examples of it, it just waters it down too much. Like it doesn't really count as much when it happens because it's kind of happening all the time. But it was definitely well used at the end of the episode. But like I said, overall, this first episode wasn't too great for me. Another problem I have, and it probably is down to me, and if you're more of a casual to like the Marvel Universe, is I think these shows really expect you to have seen the films, like all the films, and to get all the connections from the films and the different TV shows. And like, unless you're a hardcore Marvel fan, it's very hard to do that. And so I can sort of see that then it's for the fans and things like that. But yeah, I think they should make more concessions for that stuff, for if you're just like a casual fan, like who just wants to treat this as like a story on its own. Like I don't think you always should seen everything else, because that's quite demanding for people to do that. But because of that, there was certain things in this that were being referenced that I didn't quite get, or I didn't know exactly what they were talking about. So that's definitely just a problem for me. It won't be a problem for everyone, but I did have that at times. Also, overall, it wasn't that engaging. Like, it wasn't that exciting to watch. It was a little bit plodding and lacking in a little bit of an atmosphere or a mood. And I think also there's a thing with like the central metaphor that they're going for, and some of the way they're poking at like themes of like racism and like immigration. Because as I said, the stuff with Sam Jackson and him standing out to like the locals, and then you've got this like center that's taking in these scrolls, and it just feels a little bit weird that they're actually like going that far into it, because it feels like it's a bit on the nose. And the other thing is, with a superhero show like this, it sort of feels like you're already doing a metaphor. It's like the superhero world and the characters involved, they're already like outcasts in a way, or you can like use it for that kind of thing where you're sort of, it's like a fantastical imaginary version of people who are unusual and extraordinary but are kind of sneered because of that. Like, that's one of the running themes in something like the X-Men. So it doesn't really feel that you need actual real world stuff to be brought into it, because the metaphor of what they are is already doing that. So I was a bit mixed on that. I wasn't like so keen on that. And also, I just think so far some of the stuff with that is a little bit cliched. Like when they were at the centre, some of it just felt, been here, done that. It's not really doing anything that new. So that could change. We'll see where it goes with this stuff. But that's definitely a complaint from the first episode. Then it's not really doing that much new. Like, it's not doing that much exciting, and sometimes that's okay. But I think when it returns to a world that's been done so many times, it kind of does get a bit more frustrating and plodding, and so yeah, overall very mixed on this episode. It's a bit it's not really grabbing me so far, but it's only episode 1, so I will stick with it. You've got a good cast of characters, and there were definitely, as I said, stuff in it which I enjoyed, and I think the ending was well done, but we'll just see where it leads. I was also a bit with the Emilia Clarke character, because when she showed up and we saw her welcoming this new guy to the centre, this Peter character, and she seemed like very friendly and gave him a bit of food, and he was asking her about the resistance, and she said it's optional if you want to join in the resistance, but if you do, you will become leader. And she was kind of trying to like sell it on him, and then he heard like all this noise behind the door and says, "What's behind the door?" And she's like looks at him. "Victory," she says, and there's one or two like clunky lines like that, and then you get inside the door with them like treating these creatures as like slaves. So once again, but with that stuff with her, it just appeared that she was a villain by the way she was talking from the off, and as it turned out, she's not really an outright villain. It's just she's kind of been seduced onto the wrong team, if you like, and by the end, she, as I said, she does help the good guys. So we'll see where that goes, but there's just something about like her delivery, and you've had this in other stuff with Emilia Clarke where she kind of does have a natural like villain type delivery. So yeah, it was a little bit funny the way they were portraying her character in the episode, but she was perfectly good. I think she's a perfectly solid actress. So, and good cast of characters, as I said. I think another problem might have been the way you had all these characters in the one episode, and it was just jumping between them, like skipping about quite a lot. Because you've got a brief scene with like Don Cheadle, who's like the right-hand man of like the president, and you've got various other people. So there was a lot of people that were kind of covered during an hour of like the episode, and it just felt like it was skipping between them, and some of them needed a bit more time to breathe. But that could definitely be something in future episodes. Like those characters probably will get more time. So that's my thoughts on Secret Invasions episode 1. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Helps keep the content going. If you want to support me monetarily, there's a PayPal on the channel if you want to click that link and make a one-off donation, or you can support me on patreon.com/board now for just $1 a month. You get a bunch of extra reviews, commentaries, and like kind of extra like discussion style pieces, things like that. So there's a whole catalogue up there if you want to support the channel monetarily. But thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys soon.